Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm super excited today. I've got Dr. Carrie Lamb here with us. Now, she's a very high achiever and a sought after expert in the field of adrenal wellness and healing. Dr. Carrie earned her Doctor of Medicine degree from Loma Linda University, California. She is board certified in family medicine, anti-aging, and regenerative medicine. Her career focus is in primary care along with functional and integrative medicine, with emphasis on anti-aging, lifestyle medicine, and nutrition. She actually won a medical scholarship award for preventative medicine and is an author of the best international selling books, Advanced Symptoms of Adrenal Fatigue Syndrome, A Metabolic Approach, and Adrenal Fatigue Syndrome Cookbook. And she's currently practicing at Lamb Clinic in Tustin, Orange County. Today we will cover exactly what is adrenal fatigue and distinguish between this and other fatigue-related conditions for you all, plus explain the concept of the fight or flight response and the effects of cortisol. So it's important to know why and how these things are actually happening to help us avoid and heal that extreme fatigue from a deeper level of understanding. So I really want to bring clarity around that for all of you today. So welcome, Dr. Carrie.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for the invite. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And look, such an important topic, right? As we were discussing our first meeting with everything going on this year, look, I've been talking to people, there's burnout happening, people are tired, and then there's different aspects of that: physical, emotional, mental tiredness as well. And that can lead to what we hear of adrenal fatigue. So I'd love for you to clarify a few terms for us firstly. Tell us what the adrenal glands are.
Right. So just going back to the basics, adrenal glands are these little walnut-shaped glands that sit on top of each kidney. So you have two adrenal glands, most people do, and they're vital to producing many of your familiar hormones. Okay. So the adrenal gland on the outside is called the adrenal cortex, and then on the inside, there's a adrenal medulla. And both the adrenal medulla and the adrenal cortex, they produce different types of hormones. So the adrenal medulla on the inside, it produces epinephrine and norepinephrine. Those are your fight or your flight type of hormones when you see a bear, when you get scolded by your boss, or when the COVID happens. That's what happens. You put out the epinephrine and norepinephrine. And then on the outside, the adrenal cortex, on the outside in, you produce aldosterone, which is used for salt balancing in your body. Okay, so it can regulate like blood pressure and the salt content in your body. And then it produces cortisol, which is a very important adrenal hormone for inflammation and for just managing all the stress that you might be under. And then on the inside is the sweetest. So salty to sweet inside, the sweetest is the sex hormones. So it's the estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone, the DHEA. Those are all produced on the inner cortex, then the medulla on the inside. So that's basically what the adrenal glands are.
Sure, very small but very important. I can see that.
Yes.
And tell us then what the difference between these terms, because even myself, I've gotten a bit confused over time as to what adrenal fatigue is. Once I was diagnosed with that, started the research on that, but then I know other people have had chronic fatigue and Hashimoto's. Can you explain the difference between the three conditions?
Okay, so I guess I can start with what the medical diagnosis is. Okay, adrenal fatigue is not a medical diagnosis. I want to make that clear. It's not a conventional diagnosis that has an ICD code like that the general medical community actually accepts. So it's kind of like outside the box adrenal fatigue, this term. So just going for what the medical community does diagnose, the diagnosis that most people would get if they go see a doctor and they say they're fatigued for more than 6 months and they don't really know what it's from, that's called chronic fatigue syndrome. Okay, this disorder is characterized by long-term fatigue, like I said, more than 6 months, and they've really tried to rule out all types of other diagnoses and they just don't know why they're having fatigue. Okay, and then it's this catch-all term by the medical community to just diagnose somebody with unexplained fatigue. So that's chronic fatigue. That's worse with physical or mental activity, doesn't get better with rest. Some other terms for chronic fatigue is like myalgic encephalomyelitis or systemic exertional intolerance disease. Okay. Um, and then you mentioned Hashimoto's.
Right.
Hashimoto's is an autoimmune thyroid disorder. A lot of the symptoms can really overlap when you have this adrenal fatigue, chronic fatigue kind of a picture. But Hashimoto's specifically affects the thyroid. Okay, so you have antibodies that are fighting against your thyroid for some reason. And you can easily diagnose somebody with Hashimoto's by running, antibodies in the blood or doing antibody testing or doing thyroid testing. So that is also a medical diagnosis. Hashimoto's is a medical diagnosis. And sometimes what we tend to find is these thyroid labs, they can come back slightly normal, slightly subclinical. And when the numbers are a little off, the physicians might have a tendency to want to put you on medication saying, hey, you're going to feel a boost when you take this. And in the beginning, when you take thyroid medication, yeah, you're going to get a lot of energy, right? Because you're basically stimulating your thyroid to give energy. But after some time, some people might say, hey, I actually don't feel good. I'm actually wired and tired now. Like the extra thyroid is not making my fatigue actually go away. So if that's happening to you, you've been on thyroid meds, but you're still feeling tired, you have to dig a little deeper, right? Is this truly an underlying cause of thyroid problem, or is there something else going on? And that's what we tend to see, like people that come from all over the world, they've been placed on thyroid medications, or they've been placed on other natural thyroid, whether it's Armour, NP thyroid, or whatever, other thyroid herbs or glandulars, and they've been overstimulated for quite some time, but they still don't feel good. That's when we always want to look at other secondary causes. Is it the gut? Is it the adrenals? Is it the hormones? So that's where we kind of want to tell the difference, okay? And then now going to just adrenal fatigue, which I said is not a medical diagnosis, but it manifests in so many people with non-specific symptoms and differing in severity and effect. And that's why it's a syndrome, because there's so many different symptoms. Some come together, some don't come together. There's not really one specific cause that can cause adrenal fatigue. And so that's why it's called like a syndrome, okay?
Right.
And when you look at the conventional world, looking at adrenals, unfortunately, there's usually just one side of the extreme, which is Addison's disease, where really there's no adrenal hormones. Your adrenals have basically burned out, like you say, burnout, to the worst of the worst, and they can't produce cortisol. And then on the other side is Cushing's, where you have too much cortisol. And what's in between there? There's no medical diagnosis for this gray zone on each extreme, right? And that's where this adrenal fatigue kind of comes in, and this whole community comes in, and this whole like syndrome of symptoms come in, that hey, your lab tests might be normal, you might have gone and done an ACTH test, at cortisol levels in your blood or your saliva, they might all be normal, because they do fluctuate throughout the day. They vary from person to person, from situation to situation, but you're still feeling fatigued. And so this adrenal fatigue, I also want to stress that it's a term that we are thinking about changing, because now we know it's not only the adrenals, and we'll kind of go through this, where it's really a whole body stress response. And I call it the neuroendometabolic stress response, where it's the brain, it's the hormones, it's the metabolism, all coming together like an orchestra, your body, the body systems and circuits being affected by stress.
Right. And that's such a big thing. It's stress has come into play a lot of it. I know when I was trying to heal myself years back, I knew I had to address stress in some kind of way, whether it was the physical stress with exercise and toning down on that, or even the mental and emotional stress at the time. But I'd love now to ask you, why do you think then, with people and clients you've seen over the years, why do you think people are getting burnt out? And is this idea of burnout and this term that we are using, is that what kind of the preliminary to perhaps leading to adrenal fatigue or chronic fatigue? You know, yeah, what's this idea about burning on your take of it, burning out?
Yeah, this burnout term, we're getting a little more cognizant of it, you know, and it can be because of society's, I would say, expectations, right? Nowadays, as society is like full speed ahead, oh, why aren't you working 24/7? You could be making, you could be so successful if you worked harder, if you were more successful, you know, if you had more education. And we kind of place that stress on ourselves, or society does, right? It kind of looks down on people for not working. Like, what,
Right,
you're unemployed? Like, why aren't you working? And so working is kind of the norm, but not only just normal working. You have to be going the extra mile. You have to always be striving to get that bonus or that extra pay, as because of the society, right?
right,
And as human beings, I think we do want to put that stress on ourselves, and so we see that our stress is not from seeing a tiger in the woods like back in the day with the
mm,
hunters. Our stress is staying up late at night and having to finish that project, or else I know that my boss will not be mad at me, or like family
sure,
drama, or going through divorce and relationships issues. You know,
mm,
stress after stress after stress is just what then we call chronic stress.
mm,
Okay, so the epinephrine, the norepinephrine, sure, it comes out in the beginning when you have a fight or a flight. Um, and over time, as you have chronic stress, more and more epinephrine, more and more norepinephrine starts putting out. And the adrenal's other function is to put out cortisol to kind of balance that seesaw. Because when you have a lot of epinephrine, norepinephrine, you want to have more cortisol to help balance that inflammation that epinephrine causes.
right,
Okay, because you don't always want to have so much epinephrine in your body. Epinephrine is there to like constrict, to get the blood where it needs to go. You know, like it's what they give in CPR in order to like jumpstart you back to life, but it's not something that you should be having chronically. And then as the cortisol starts, your adrenals start putting out more and more cortisol, then at some point in time it's going to say, hey, I'm tired of putting out cortisol. And that's what we look at the burnout, you know.
right,
um, you drink, you sleep, you stay up late, you wake up the next day super tired, you drink a cup of coffee. What does that do? That tells your adrenals, okay, produce more cortisol artificially, because it's going to start stimulating your adrenals. Hey, you need to work harder, adrenals, why aren't you keeping up? And then soon your adrenals start to burn through more cortisol until you just it burns out. Your adrenals also can burn out, and it reduces the amount of hormones that it can produce. Okay, not only the cortisol, but then hormones like estrogen, progesterone, your
right.
other aldosterone, and then it starts affecting your gut. You know, cortisol also affects the gut in making it leaky. So in the beginning, you might have high cortisol, and that actually makes your gut more leaky, which puts you at more prone of having these antibodies, which are like immune cells that are attacking foods that you normally eat,
Wow.
right? And all of this is just a kind of a cascade of events that we want to look at the whole body, right? If you also don't have a good lifestyle, that could also lead to stress on your body, right? Basically, if you don't
Sure.
eat well, or if you're stressed, then your gut becomes a little more leaky, and you definitely have to look at that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, that's such a good explanation of it all. And it's kind of answered then. I was going to ask you if it gradually gets worse, so this tiredness, and explain for us the different stages now, if you could, of adrenal fatigue for me. But I'm kind of gathering now that the this idea of tiredness and burnout does accumulate, and then it can have a spin-off effect of going, oh, well, now we've overdone it with cortisol, therefore it's going to affect our gut, and that's kind of moving into other problems. So it's this domino effect, it seems, of so much
Yes.
of our body and our mind then getting affected, which I think clarifies for a lot of us, yeah, why we feel so exhausted. Because I would have described it when I was going through the worst of feeling almost numb, like
Mm-hmm.
this numbness. um, and this extreme tiredness, but not just tiredness when you have a late night for a couple of hours and you might miss out on 2 hours sleep once. It's a very different level of tiredness, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
explain for us the different stages of adrenal fatigue. So let's say if we have gone to a doctor or spoken to a professional about this, and they said, yeah, your adrenals are the problem for the tiredness. What are the different stages we're looking at then to go through and then to come out of that?
Yeah. So yeah, we'll go through quite a bit because there's a lot to adrenal fatigue, and if you definitely have questions, just know that adrenal fatigue, it's very hard to go through yourself. Like you said yourself, Vanessa, I wish I had your information like a few
Right.
years ago, right? If you are struggling with adrenal fatigue, you don't know what to do, the best thing you can do is to find help. You don't want to self-navigate because depending on what stage you are, what your body's constitution is, you don't want to put more fuel on the fire. You want to make sure you do what's right in order to get better in the right way, because what might be right for the beginning stage might not be right for the later stage, right? So that's very important that I want to bring up. And so
Sure, absolutely.
talking about the different stages, okay, and this is all in our book, or our website, if you want to really go through it in depth. We'll kind of just go pretty
Yeah,
briefly,
yeah.
okay. There's stage one. There's 4 stages basically, okay. Stage 1 is the alarm reaction. Stage 2 is the resistance response. Stage 3 is adrenal exhaustion. And then stage 4 is adrenal failure. So stage 1, alarm reaction. This happens when your body first is bombarded with a lot of different types of stressors. It goes into the alarm mode, which is the fight or the flight, putting out the epinephrine, the norepinephrine, and the cortisol that we talked about. And it's a normal response. It's healthy. You need to have that response in order to run away from that tiger, right?
Sure.
However, if the stress prolongs, this alarm reaction can become chronic. And so in the beginning stages of adrenal fatigue, most likely your symptoms are unnoticeable. You might be a little more tired than usual, but not enough to go to see a doctor, right? You can just increase your intake of stimulants like coffee or energy drinks to get through the day. You'll still be able to maintain your focus, your productivity, your performance. So most likely the hormone circuit is still able to work efficiently here.
Yeah.
Then we go to stage 2, which is called resistance response. Now, when the stress becomes chronic and the adrenal glands can't produce enough cortisol to meet the growing demand, you enter this stage where it starts to be a little more resistant. Your fatigue gets a little more pronounced. It starts to get in the way of your daily activities. You notice at work, you might be nodding off a little, okay? You might experience new symptoms like anxiousness or PMS symptoms, okay? Or irritability, getting frequent colds when other people are not getting colds, and problems sleeping. But even if you do sleep, you kind of don't feel very refreshed, okay? So this is where the neuroendometabolic hormone circuit starts to dysregulate, and your hormones, which includes the adrenals, the thyroid, and the reproductive organs, they get a little more affected, and then they also affect the other circuits like the brain, the autonomic system, the gut, and the detoxing in the immune system. So, but because adrenal fatigue is not recognized by mainstream medicine, each symptom you report will most likely be treated like a separate condition. Like if you go to your doctor and you say, I'm feeling a little like depressed mood, they might give you an antidepressant. Or if you complain of fatigue, you go see the doctor, they might run your thyroid labs, put you on thyroid medication.
Right.
Or if you get blood work done and they says hormone imbalance, then you might be put on hormone replacement. But this is not really a global picture, right? It's just fixing little parts of the symphony, and it's just
Sure.
not all together. The puzzle is not really pieced together. And so, but most likely routine labs will probably be normal, no adrenal issues, okay? So then we move on to stage 3, which is a little more complicated because it breaks down into A, B, C, D, okay? So stage 3 is adrenal exhaustion. Your adrenals have really just overworked to the point that they're exhausted, and your cortisol output actually decreases and drops significantly. So you might still remain at high stress level, and now it's affecting all the different neuroendometabolic stress circuits, okay, which is your whole body. And now you're experiencing one or more adrenal crashes, and recovering from the crashes actually takes longer than the previous one. You're just going downhill. Organs and systems are all not working. They're slowing down. Digestion slows down. You're trying to conserve energy. You start gaining weight, you know. So this exhaustion, even if you try to drink coffee and the stimulants and the thyroid meds, it's not making a difference. You're really tired, okay?
Yeah.
So phase A of this third stage of adrenal exhaustion is called chronic single system dysfunction, where just basically single organs in the immune system or the nervous system or the metabolism, their dysfunctions become a little more chronic, okay? But it's basically only like singled out to just one system. So maybe it's problem sleeping, maybe it's a mood issue, or maybe it's an immune system issue. And you can still get to work, but you find yourself needing to rest and sleep a little more. If it gets a little worse, then it goes to phase B, which is multiple endocrine axis dysfunction, which is now spreading to multiple organs. Okay. So basically, if you're in your hormone circuit, it's not going to only be your thyroid anymore. It's going to start affecting your ovaries, your ovarian output. It's going to start affecting your adrenal output. Okay. And then the whole hormone cascade can also then be dragging down. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
multiple axes are now being affected.
Sure.
You're with me still?
I am.
Okay.
It's interesting because I'm thinking along going, wow, I certainly went through all of these things that you're describing to a T.
Yes.
And there was that kind of this decline over probably a year, and then it took 2 years to come back up. But going
Yes.
through all of that, I can see how
Now you
anyone
can picture it. Yeah.
would.
People who've gone through this, they know exactly what I'm talking about. So
Yeah, and I think it's just so good to inform people too. Like if you are at a stage where you're just a bit tired, it's great for you to know this information and have it there just in case, you know, or just to prevent and be very aware and knowledgeable, right? Yeah, so let's continue with that, and then we'll go from there.
yeah, then we can go through how to help, right? So phase A, like I said, one system. Phase B, multiple systems. Phase C is where your body becomes this equilibrium, okay? Unable to maintain homeostasis. It begins to overreact, trying to reach a state of balance to try to repair. So normal things that you don't react to, you start getting paradoxical reactions, more panic attacks, anxiousness, fluctuating blood pressure, fluctuating blood sugars. You find that you have to eat very often. You get very hungry every 2 to 3 hours, or else you get hangry, okay? And when people have reached this phase, your body has lost a lot of its strength, okay? It's all the compensatory mechanisms that it's been trying to use is already been used, okay? And so now it just produces these crude, uncontrolled reactions, like even smelling gasoline. You might have a reaction, or a perfume. Someone walks by with perfume and you just like go into a panic attack, right? Or you start seeing that you're very sensitive to certain supplements, even the normal dosing. You have to take baby doses, okay? Because you just start to react to everything. And so this is another reason why I would say that you should not experiment with treatments on your own, especially when you're in this phase C, you're just disequilibrated. It's so important to not just experiment. Hey, I'm going to try this supplement, or I'm going to try this treatment, or something like that. It's not, it could actually end up triggering or worsening your paradoxical reactions. So then the reactions themselves, they become more of a stressor again on their own, putting more pressure on your body. So it's very important to, find someone who's experienced, a healthcare practitioner, or someone who's been through adrenal fatigue, or, consult with someone, because you need to get back your body, and you don't want to just do it in a way that's not safe. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then if you keep going down that road of, you know, trying to fix things yourself, you can get into near failure. That's phase D, okay, which
Oh,
is
wow.
completely depleting your hormones. Not enough hormones to keep the adrenals functioning. You're basically, your body will shut down, and then it will enter a catabolic state. Okay, what does that mean? So previously you were you know, hungry, you were eating all the time, and you were gaining weight, but now at this stage you're actually catabolic. You're burning through your fat, you're burning through your
Right.
muscles in order to break down and create energy. But even that won't be enough fuel to get you through. You're bedridden, you really can't do anything. You're lying in bed. Even answering the phone is work. Even answering
Wow.
emails is work. And so
Yeah.
you're just really just like, we call that an adrenal crash. Crashes become more frequent,
Sure.
and you spend most of your time in bed. Okay, so
That's,
that's phase D.
wow,
Um,
that's no way to live.
no,
How long would you say it takes someone to get through those phases, or is that different for everybody?
it definitely is different, for everybody based on how long they've had their chronic stress for, you know.
Right.
And some people, they go from, you know, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, B, C,
Sure.
B, C, B, C. So it's not like,
Yes.
not just a linear thing. Every person is so personalized, so different. And it depends on your body's constitution, right? Also, like, how sensitive are you? Do you
Mm,
have any of the genetic issues that other people might not have, you know?
yeah.
Uh, and so it just depends, what kind of toxins have you been exposed to. Every person is
Yeah.
so different. That's why a
So, yeah,
personalized approach
absolutely.
is definitely what you need. And
Yeah.
so there's no really like, so some people it can take months, years, and
Mm,
others they've gone through it for like 10 years and 20.
wow.
So it's just,
Gosh. Yeah.
mhm.
And you know, and on this event too, I really want people to know that, you know, the burnout kind of thing, these first little bits of tiredness or exhaustion that you feel, you got to address it. You know, go and get it checked then, or go and talk to a professional, that I'm hooking you up with here, because
Mhm.
then you can prevent so much more, and it really disrupting
Yes.
lifestyle. We don't,
Yeah.
you know, we want to thrive in our life, right? We want to
Yes.
thrive.
Thriving,
We've all had a
not
crazy year.
surviving. Right?
You know,
Yeah.
thriving is this word, everyone says thriving, but at the end of the day, all we want is good health and happiness. I think, like, let's simplify things down again for our health. But if you can't get a simple nice day, and where you have energy to go through that day and enjoy time with family, friends, enjoy your work, where you're not overloaded with so much stimulation and stuff that makes you feel really yuck on the inside,
Yes.
then that's, life is disrupted then, isn't it? It's that thriving thing's not even available to you. So I want
Yes.
people to be able to thrive and prevent the burnout and be brilliant and be happy every day. So tell us
I love
what
that.
we could do, right? For we can't go through all these stages in this interview to address them, but let's say if someone is tired a lot, or maybe feeling a bit of those sensitivities you mentioned, of maybe a little bit
Yeah.
anxious now, or they're noticing their health isn't great, they're waking up perhaps at 2 a.m. quite often because the hormones are starting to go out a bit. What can we do? What's just something simple here that we can do today to kind of go to pull right back from your
Yeah.
expertise?
Yeah. All right. So sorry. I think I went through stage 3D, but the stage 4 we didn't talk about. But basically, that's adrenal failure, which is very similar to Addison's. So I just wanted to put that
Right.
out there,
Sure, sure. Thank you.
where
Yeah.
just to be complete about it.
I know.
Um,
Yes, we are.
okay.
We've
Yeah.
covered it. It's
And you
great.
don't want to be at adrenal. I mean, if you were adrenal failure, you'd probably be in a hospital
Right,
or
of course.
right. So,
Yeah.
so what can you do? Like you said, if
Yeah,
you
what's a
had issues
simple
with,
thing to, yeah,
yeah.
just to kind of pull back from all that if we're feeling a little
So
bit tired right now?
yeah, so being cognizant, right? If you're reaching for that coffee, the first step is, hey, why am I feeling tired? Okay. So the first step is always to, you know, educate yourself and be cognizant. Hey, is there something else going on that's making me tired? Should I be looking more into this, and not reaching for the coffee? And then, so that's for stage 1, you know. Then stage 2, you have to really keep in mind too that it's really not just one system. You have to really look at your whole body, right?
Right.
So if you go see a doctor, you know, make sure you are addressing all the issues. Make sure you're addressing your diet, your lifestyle, your are you exercising too much? Because even we see a lot of, you know, athletes, and they've burned out. Really, we see a lot of doctors, lawyers, high functioning people, is
Right.
because they've gone a lot of chronic stress, and they burn themselves out, right? And so being cognizant on when to hit on the brakes in your lifestyle is very important. And then one of the most practical things that I would recommend if you woke up in the middle of the night and you weren't able to fall asleep is really breathing. Okay, that's probably the number one thing. We call it adrenal breathing, but um, you have to ask yourself why you're waking up in the middle of the night. First of all, it could be a metabolic issue where cortisol is affected by your sugars. So if your sugars drop, you're hungry, you might wake up in the middle of the night. Okay, so maybe taking a handful of nuts, okay, like to see whether it would help you go back to sleep. That's always a good challenge. So we like to do challenges to see, hey, is this going to help, or is this going to help? Like, because each person is so different. Or is it a sympathetic response that your cortisol is like spiking up at night, and that's why you wake up in the middle of the night? Then how do I bring that cortisol and that sympathetic response down? By boosting my parasympathetic response. How do I boost my parasympathetic response? By breathing. And this is not like a full deep breath type of breathing. No, it has to be like a very calming 70% type of a breath using your abdomen and your
Right.
belly. So we have a very specific way that we teach our clients to do breathing. Okay. And because breathing itself is the best way to bring up your parasympathetics to balance that sympathetic response, right? The yogis in India, they can control their heart rate just by their breath.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to be able to do. It's that we want to control that sympathetic response by continually doing that breathing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too. Such simple things can really make a big difference, like stopping and breathing, but being, like you said, aware of what's going on in your life that you're tired. Like sometimes I think we just keep going and going. We're busy and we don't want to address things, or we don't have time to go, oh yes, I need to get that looked into. I need to get that looked into.
Yes.
And it gets
Yes.
put to the side and put to the side. But in fact, this is the stage that's most important to address the burnout and be really upfront with ourselves, and I suppose accountable, right? And just aware, more self-aware, but kinder to ourselves, to go,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I will give myself that 1 hour out to go and connect with someone to look into this, because this is a problem now. Like I'm getting up at 2 a.m. every evening. Something's going on in my life. But as you said at the very start, it's this, what's going on with, relationships, work, food, exercise, it all plays a big role, right?
Very.
So,
Yeah.
that's a big thing we need to address as well. And the final thing I suppose I'd ask you is, so from there, we're starting to implement these small changes within our lifestyle and perhaps connected with someone to help us heal. Do you believe there's other support that needs to happen? So, for example, other family members being on board, because I know with myself, it was quite lonely going through the journey, because years back as well, there wasn't as much support online, there wasn't as much accessibility, and I felt weird. I felt really strange going through it, because my colleagues would be like, "Well, yeah, we're doing this and this at the gym, and we have all these clients," and I'm like, well, I can barely do half an hour at the moment, let alone the 4 hours of classes you guys are doing. So this kind of maybe letting people know, I don't know, what's your advice on that? Do you share this with your partner? Because it's quite invisible.
Yeah. And it's hard when right, it's not a real medical diagnosis. You're
Right.
like, my doctor doesn't believe me. How is my family members going to believe me? But, you know, it is very important to try to get that support, but I know that it's not there for everybody. Like,
Mm.
right, that is one of the questions we always want to ask in the beginning, that, hey, does your family understand what you're going through? Because a lot of the stress can come from that. You know, your spouse or your family, they're not understanding what you're going through, and then you have this added layer of stress, right? And so it is, I would say it's very important to get that support. But if you don't find it from family or friends, you know, there are support groups, even for people that are very similar on social media. And even like on our webpage, there's a bunch of people who have left testimonials because they wanted to let other people know, hey, this is real and I got better and you can get better, right? And so like watching that, you can get a little more encouraged, or you can reach out to people to be able to help you if you don't have that support. But I would say, yes, I think it's always good to have that open communication. Like when I do my consults, I, I'm very open. I'm like, hey, get your husband here and we can talk
Sure.
together, right? Like we all need to be on the same page or something like that. So
Yeah.
it's not only just you having to explain secondhand, they can hear from me, an expert about adrenal fatigue on what you're going through. So they will understand.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good tip. Thank you for reminding us of that as
Yeah.
well. Look, I think I could ask you questions all day on this incredible topic.
There's so
Um,
much.
yeah, there really, really is. Like, I hope that this has been beneficial to our wonderful audience. I will leave it there for today, but I do want to connect you guys with Dr. Carrie as well and her team. So there's some options here. Go to drlambcoaching.com. There's some fantastic resources on there. They've actually got a starter kit as well with a full textbook and information, an ebook on adrenal fatigue and the different stages and how to start healing yourself, plus an ebook and some really great exercises as well. And you can also get in touch with this amazing team on the phone number 626-5711-234, and of course dial in your country code as well if you're outside the US for them, but they're very available to answer you on the website as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Carrie, for joining us. I really look forward to connecting with you again on another interview, and thanks for being part of this series to help people.
No, thank you so much, Vanessa, for this time. I just want to, say that really education is the first key. So really get the starter kit, educate yourself. What is adrenal fatigue? What stage are you in? What can you do? And if you really have questions, call us, like you said, at the 626-571-1234 for a free initial telephone consultation. We talk to people all over the world because we've seen thousands and thousands of cases of adrenal fatigue. So
Right.
we want to be able to help you, empower you on this health journey. So thanks,
Yeah,
Vanessa, for the time.
fantastic. Thank you again, and we'll talk again with you soon. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone. Bye.